Return to the forest. Mangli tugged her shawl tighter around her shoulders, stepping gingerly over the loose stones that were scattered across the path. Januaries in Bastar were cold, and her breath formed soft clouds as she huffed and puffed out into the chilly morning air. Since today was a Sunday, she had agreed to accompany her grandmother into the forest to collect herbs and fruits. They trekked steadily up a slope that led into a grove of mahua trees that lined the edge of the jungle, their broad leaves glinting in the winter sunlight. Mangli skipped and skittered around her grandmother, bombarding her with a barrage of questions about what they would be bringing back from the forest. Will we need to climb tall trees to reach it? Will we be able to eat any of the fruits before taking them to the hut to sell them? Her grandmother answered each query slowly, with the unending patience that comes with having raised 3 children and 8 grandchildren. Suddenly she stopped and pulled Mangli to her side. Look, she said, pointing at a small plant almost hidden within a dense undergrowth of shrubs. It's a kalmeg plant. Help me look behind these bushes. I am sure there must be more. Delighted to have found something so early in the day, compared to the hours she had had to walk on other days before they stumbled onto anything, Mangli scampered over to the plant and peered between the shrubbery. The pearly white buds of dozens of kalmeg waved back at her, glistening in the morning dew. There are many more behind the bushes, she exclaimed. Jubilant with her discovery, Mangli squatted down to the ground and began ripping the plant from the mud. Mangli, stop! Her grandmother's voice was firm, stopping Mangli in her tracks. You must never pull out the entire plant. All we need is the leaf. If you pull it out at the roots, the plant can never grow back. But if we take just the leaves and let the plant live, when we come back in a few months or years, the same plant can give us so many leaves again. Her grandmother's words ran around in Mangli's head as she painstakingly picked out the individual leaves from the dainty plant. Soon, their baskets were filled, and they began the long walk back home. A few days passed. Mangli busied herself with schoolwork. Exams were coming up in a few weeks, and the Hindi exam always made her anxious. Although she was fluent in spoken Hindi, after all everyone in school spoke in Hindi, the grammar tests made her feel like tearing her hair out in frustration, because she simply could not get it right. To make matters worse, there was no one who could help her at home, because her parents and grandparents only spoke in the local language, Durvi. So, every evening after school, she would trudge desolately to her friend Jamuna's house, where Jamuna's aunt, who had gone to school in her childhood, would help all the children in the neighborhood muster the courage to tackle the terrifying world of Hindi grammar. Today, as Mangli chewed on the back of her pencil, which was already covered in bite marks, searching desperately for any conversation that could save her from changing past tense to present tense, her grandmother's words suddenly reoccurred to her. Kamla Didi, she began tentatively, afraid of angering her strict young teacher. Have you ever harvested kalmeg? Do you pull out the entire plant or just the leaves? Kamala wrinkled her nose, thrown off by this sudden change in subject from tenses to kalmeg. I haven't gone very often, so I don't really remember, but I think I just pulled out the entire plant. Why do you ask? By now, Hindi grammar had completely escaped Mangli's attention, and her mind was abuzz. How was it that even Kamala did not know the right way to harvest a plant? She was an adult. Throwing her books into her bag, Mangli thanked Kamala for her help and left. Determined to find out how much the other adults knew about the forest, Mangli wandered into the nearby fields. 1 month ago, the fields were an endless ocean of bright yellow mustard flowers, swaying back and forth in the breeze. Now, as the time to harvest them had arrived, the flowers had withered to a dull brown. Mangli trotted from one field to the other, deftly evading the piles of seeds that were being harvested, inquiring of every person she met about what they harvested and how. She walked back home with her brows furrowed in concentration. What she had learned today was far more interesting than Hindi grammar, but far more worrying as well. Upon reaching home, she went straight to her grandmother. Why do so many grown-ups also pull out the entire plant when they are collecting things from the forest? Don't they know it will kill the plant? Her grandmother looked up from the pile of leaves she was sewing into the plates that they would use for dinner tonight. It's not so easy, Mangli. Some plants need to be pulled out by the root like onions because it is the root that has all the nutrition. In some plants, we humans like to eat the fruits, while sometimes we only need the leaves and sometimes we need the roots. What is important is to learn how each plant can be harvested in a way that causes the least damage and, if possible, allows the plant to live as long as possible. Do you know how to do that? Mangli asked. I know because my parents taught me, her grandmother replied. But it is not your parents' fault that they do not know, or that they did not teach you, because they were busy growing rice and maize and mustard in our fields. That's what they were taught, and that is what they are teaching you. Many in their generation have forgotten the ways of the forest. Mangli's eyes widened with concern. But is it important that they are reminded about the forest too? Right? Her grandmother sighed. Of course, but it's not an easy task. How will you remind an entire generation of a knowledge that has been forgotten? Mangli ran her fingers through her hair, thinking intently. Her head snapped up in a few moments later, her eyes shining with the delight of a newly formed idea. How about I make a painting? I can do it on one of the walls of the Panchayat Bhavan, and everyone will see it that way. I'm sure Sarpanch ji will be okay with it. What will you put in the painting, Mangli? Her grandmother asked, uncertain. I will paint the forest. I can paint all the different plants and trees. I can even add people collecting all the fruits and seeds we bring back, and some animals eating them too. With each passing sentence, her excitement grew, and soon Mangli was hopping from one foot to another. Her grandmother smiled. I think that's a great idea. To make it even better, why don't you ask other people to help you? Everyone can be a part of it. They will surely learn and remember even better that way. Mangli nodded along in agreement. In order to know what to paint and how to paint it, we will all need to visit the forest. You can come with us and teach us what is what. This will definitely work. Just wait and see. The next few days passed by in a blur. The harvest was finally completed, giving everyone a few days to rest. Now that they did not have to rush out to the fields every morning, a blanket of leisure settled upon the village. People flocked out of their homes every morning, greeting each other and spending hours together after finishing small tasks that they did not have time for during the last few months. That's when Mangli began her project. Every morning, she would approach a few new people, assailing them with a flurry of explanations about the importance of the forest. Her earnest pleading would convince them to join her in an expedition to the jungle. Her grandmother accompanied them, carefully identifying all of the different herbs, plants and trees that their ancestors always depended on. Mangli brought all kinds of people. Young women who had newly entered the village after marriage, mothers with toddlers trailing behind them, clutching onto their saris, men and women who had finally finished a season of hard harvest, young boys and girls who joined them in the afternoons after school had ended, and even the elderly who slowly began adding their own knowledge and memories to the fast-growing mural. And the mural really did grow fast. It began with a grove of trees, tamarind, mahua, shal, bamboo and mango, with the leaves and branches of each one sketched out in excruciating detail. Next came the medicinal herbs, hara, behra, kalmeg, giloy and amla. Slowly, more and more species were added. Tendu shrubs, mushrooms like chatti and boda, and even other creatures such as fish in the stream and the cocoons of the silkworm. Entire families were drawn in, fascinated by the enormous masterpiece that was emerging in the center of their village. Even those who walked by the building without batting an eyelid every day were eventually drawn in by the energy and excitement that filled the project. The end of the month brought an end to the project, and the start of the village mela or fair. Hundreds of families from nearby villages poured into the village, and each and every one of them were transfixed by the mural. Mangli welcomed everyone proudly, repeating the same introduction to every person who stopped by to see the painting. This is our forest. This is how we use it, and each and every one of the trees in this painting will be present in the forest for all of our children and grandchildren to see.